What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I did want to go over my honest thoughts on the new Volume 8 update here on Need for Speed Unbound. Now, I do understand this is going to be fairly early on, but I have done a good amount of events, basically being a racer and a cop. Now, similar to Hot Pursuit, you're going to have some racers, and obviously some of the other people are going to be police. In this case, it is going to be 4v4. You're going to be able to basically do one round on each side. You could be a cop, then a racer. I would say it's probably going to be kind of like a preference thing of which class you most likely prefer to pick, but either way though, once you actually do a round of it in the PvP playlist, you are going to have to do one side of each basically because, to see what you can get is like a racer if you can win it, or how many busts you can get as a police officer. Now, I do admit right now I actually do like this, but there is some things I have to be honest with that I'm not the biggest fan of. So number one here, being a racer for me is probably pretty dang entertaining, but for some odd reason back on Hot Pursuit, I was always preferring to be a cop. Is that going to be the case on Need for Speed Unbound? Well, to be honest, guys, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure how I actually feel about it. Now, the reason for this, though, is let me jump into this just a tad deeper. My first overall event I've ever done in the Hot Pursuit playlist, I managed to win it. I was actually using one of my favorite S-tiered vehicles, which is the BMW M3 Touring. Is it going to be the best S-tiered vehicle? Well, that is going to be up for discussion. But when you are on the racer side of things, the goal here is to, win the event and most likely get there without being busted. So you're probably going to pick a car that you're most likely going to be fairly comfortable with, that you can dodge the police, go around the spike strips, and most likely play a bit more carefully. That way you can win it, and also hope you most likely don't get busted. Now, the one thing about this, though, is if you were jumping back on Unbound hoping it was going to be just like Hot Pursuit, it is not going to be the same thing, guys. The reason for that is the racers do not get weapons, at least as far as I do know. Playing a bit, I have not seen anything about the racers having weapons. Only the police actually get a few of the weapons. So the big thing here is you're going to have to basically race dodge some of that stuff. I haven't leveled up enough to get like the EMPs or the other things. I do have the spike strip with the police, which I will jump into that in a minute here. But I would say a lot of players are most likely going to enjoy the police part of it over the main racer part of it because of the weapons. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be impossible to win races because you can definitely win them. Funny thing is, the first race I actually won, my car was basically critical damage and I still managed to win it. Also, fun fact by the way, you can go through the main gas stations in the events as a racer and a cop driver. So you can actually fix your car during that event. Sometimes I would say the way they design the races was a bit odd. I mean, sometimes you'd be around 60 to 70% complete on that main event, and you actually find a gas station over there to where you can repair your car. And we all do know if you are a racer, you are most likely going to win at that point, or at least finish the race in general. So in return, the cops are obviously going to lose. I don't think it's going to be a terrible design the way they did it, but I would say having a gas station towards the end of the event kind of alleviates the entire damage thing of actually wrecking that said racer. So I do admit though, having a gas station toward the end of the events is kind of an odd design, only because you're like, alright bro, my car is fixed, I'm probably not going to get wrecked. If you are going faster, the police are definitely going to have issues catching you, at least early on in this update. Once they actually level up, get some of the other cars, it will probably get a bit easier to most likely bust the races at that point. But if you are a racer though, and you actually get your car to 100% health, I would say you're most likely going to be okay. I did have a few events to where my car was pretty low, I fixed it, and I actually had a bunch of confidence. I was like, alright bro, we only have 20%. Y'all are not busting me. Funny thing is, they didn't. Yes, they might hit you, they can randomly spawn out of nowhere, which I'll jump into that again here in a second. But as a racer, you also have to watch out for this. If you guys are racing, you will notice that some of the police are behind you and then they're not. There's going to be NPC police, which honestly are pretty awful. And what I mean by awful though is I don't think the police are all that intimidating. At least it's probably going to be a lot scarier seeing random players basically pop up out of nowhere, which if you are being a racer, you're probably going to notice that sometimes again the police will be with you, as in, the players, and then other times you're going to be like, well, wait a second, where are they at? Turns out they actually go down the street a bit. They can't spawn ahead of you, come toward you and run after you, or at least spawn closer to you when you are faster. So do keep an eye out for them, guys, when they randomly spawn out of nowhere. How do I feel about the redeploy thing? Well, to be honest, they probably had to do it. The reason for that is if you are going to be a racer, we all do know there are some really skilled racers out there to where if they actually get far enough in front, like let's say they're around 500 or 600 yards away, let's be honest, you are most likely not going to catch them. So being able to redeploy and actually get closer does make a lot of sense. Do let me know what you guys think about that design in the comments below. For me personally right now, from the amount of races I have done, I do find the racing part of it to be extremely fun even though it is pretty intense, and the fact that the police actually get weapons to where the racers don't might actually frustrate many people. The big thing here is I'm looking forward to having actual S Plus events, but I'm also wondering how that is going to work. The reason why is in the current featured playlist when I was recording this video, it was only S-based events. Now what I mean by that though is it's going to be S-based for the racers. They have to use an S-rated vehicle. The cops on the other hand have to use an S plus vehicle, which I'm gonna guess right now and say they most likely designed it like this on purpose. A quick example of this though is you're probably going to want to nerf the racers just slightly, giving them a tad bit of a slower vehicle, whereas the cops are going to be a tad faster so they can catch up to you. Now the thing is, I'm sure they're probably going to have S plus races and stuff, but let's be honest though, if you actually had a Koenigsegg Regera like a Bugatti, and all you actually had was a regular Crown Victoria police car, you are probably going to get destroyed, bro. Like, that's just reality. Those cars are faster. So I'm going to wonder how they're actually going to do it. Will you end up having an S Plus racing car going against an S Plus police? Or is it always going to be a class level behind to give the police an advantage in that said event? Overall, though, guys, I would like to know your thoughts on the racing part of the main update. Do you actually like it? What are some changes you would like to see in this if you actually are a racer compared to a cop? Now, one thing I would also see not only for the racers, but this can also be for the cops. That is probably going to be a small like rear view mirror on the top of your screen similar to the old Hot Pursuit. I feel like that would actually be a cool Easter egg because you know this update is based on that, but who knows, maybe they can add it. The next thing I did want to talk about is going to be the cop side of it and what I actually think about it. So number one, as I did mention before, the game basically starts you out in a Crown Victoria. Not going to be a terrible car in any way. In fact, it's actually pretty dang quick. The only thing about this though, guys, you're going to spawn in basically at the start of that set event when the racers actually fly by you. You then start off, you go toward them, you speed up and try to hit them, right? There's also going to be a thing on the bottom left of your screen that is going to be a deployment thing. What this actually means is if you are insanely far away from the racers, you can hit that, it's then going to spawn you even closer to them. In a few ways, I'm actually like, you know, this is pretty dope, I like it. In other ways, I don't like the way they designed it. The reason why is sometimes when you actually hit that deployment thing, you spawn way too far ahead of the racers. Why is that an issue? The thing is, guys, if racers are barreling down that road doing 150 miles an hour and you're spawned all the way in front of them, you then have to turn around. Like, yeah, you can go hit them head on, which is probably the best option, or you can actually wait for them to actually get closer to you and then speed up and try to hit them and race with them from there. I do actually like the fact that you can stay with the racers for the most part, but if you do fall way too far behind, I understand why the deployment thing is actually there. Now, I also do admit though, actually using that and spawning 17 miles ahead of the racers and having to turn around is also a bit frustrating, but again, I guess I understand how they actually did it. Now, playing as a cop, is it going to be fun? To be honest, guys, I actually like being a racer and a cop, but what do I actually like more? Again, I'm not 100% sure on that. Being a cop is going to be pretty entertaining, and I would say once you actually unlock some of the better cars from the main cop career, you are probably going to have a better time instead of using the Crown Victoria the entire time. Luckily though, once you actually get 3 playlists completed, which is playing in the main playlist, once 3 of those are done, you're then going to get the Spike Strip. This is actually pretty dope, and as far as I do know in the set event, you have an unlimited amount of number of them. The only thing is there's going to be like a cooldown, so you can't like spam them every 2 seconds, which I would say makes sense. Then you can try to like hit the racers with it, knock some of their tires out, and then go do some extra damage afterwards, or you know, hopefully the other racers most likely pop in there and then do a ton of damage. Then boom, you can actually work together and destroy the racers. Who would have thought that teamwork would have been a thing? I am totally shocked. At the same time though, the whole deployment thing I was talking about definitely has to be in there. When you are driving something like the lovely Crown Victoria, you're probably not going to do a ton of damage when you hit other cars with it, but at least you can actually ram them, do some damage. And also, guys, when you are being a cop, watch out for the other cops, by the way. Not the players, though, the other NPC police. They legit spawn in the worst places ever, and my goodness, those Ford Raptor cops love to pop out of legitimately nowhere and pretty much get in your way, blocking you every time they do it. Besides that, though, when being a cop, the biggest thing you have to do is bust the racer. Shocking? Probably not. You also have to bust them before they get to the end of the event, but as I did mention before, when you were being a racer, you can go through the actual main like gas stations, which you can also do the same thing as a cop, which is kind of odd. Like, I don't know why you would do it. Most of the time, you probably can't destroy a cop car. That would most likely not make any sense. If you actually did, well, my goodness, those racers are wrecking you, or you're probably getting hit by your own teammates, which, doesn't make sense either. But at that point, though, if they actually are going through the main gas stations, you're most likely not going to bust them. And what's funny about this is I legitimately had multiple races to where that gas station was around 75 to 80% into the race. To be honest, guys, the way they probably should have done that is to make it a bit earlier in that event. That way it's actually going to give the police a chance to bust them. Let's be honest, if you actually hit a gas station at 80% into that event, you are most likely not going to be busted. I mean, it's pretty dang obvious. So when it does come to my overall experience so far in the new Need for Speed Unbound update, what do I think about it? What are some of my big takeaways? So first thing right now, I have to admit, guys, I don't know if people are actually going to like it. The reason why I do say that is I really do feel like the overall PvP playlist part of it is going to be heavily police focused. What I mean by that, though, is you're probably going to have a lot more fun being a cop than a racer. The reason for that is going to come down to the cop getting the weapons. You're also going to be using a slower vehicle as a racer, whereas something like if you are a cop, you're going to have an S plus rated vehicle. And I have noticed some of those cars are going to be a bit insane. That one Porsche car is absolutely insane, guys. Like, it was catching up to me instantly. And I do feel like racers are going to be at a tad of a disadvantage. On top of that, though, when being a racer, if you actually do end up getting busted, which I would say most of the time is probably going to be what will end up happening, you are then going to turn into a cop and go after the other racers, which makes it even harder because of a few reasons. For one, we just mentioned before that some of the cars being S plus rated are going to be insanely quick. Number two, after that, though, you can actually spawn way far ahead of them and also spawn very close by to the other racers, making it even harder for the said racers to get away. I would say, guys, the overall like spawning thing isn't a terrible idea. Like, yes, you can redeploy, but I really do feel like it's going to be a bit annoying if you are a racer. I really do feel like a lot of players might end up jumping onto this game mode, and they're most likely not going to be a fan of it. I do understand like the police side of it is normally going to have an advantage. I mean, on Hot Pursuit, you had something to like the police having a lot of nitrous, or at least it did go up a bit quicker. But on top of that, though, the racers also had all kinds of weapons, kind of like Need for Speed Rivals, to where you can actually fight against the police. And in return, though, that might end up making a lot of players most likely only want to play as a cop, and then a lot of players won't even want to be a racer because of the huge disadvantage. Now, there is also one more thing I did want to mention in this video. If you are going to be a big fan of single player, you're most likely going to be disappointed. The reason for that is, well, for one, we all do know each update is going to be based on multiplayer. For this one, though, it's going to be heavily multiplayer focused. And as far as I do know, I probably could be wrong on this, but I don't think you can actually use the police cars in single player. I was looking around for the Crown Victoria. It's nowhere to be found on my single player account. So I would actually like the fact that they could add some of this stuff into single player, because we all do know not everybody wants to play multiplayer. Then again, like, I understand like the entire dev team is smaller, they're focusing on multiplayer, and they're most likely going to forget about single player, which I guess is okay, but I have to admit, guys, it's definitely unfortunate. Like, give me all these police cars on single player, add some of the old modes from the Volume 7 update, and at least let the people go on single player and enjoy some of it. Overall, though, I would like to know your thoughts on the Volume 8 update in the comments below. What are some of the things you guys like? What are some of the things you don't like? And does this update truly live up to Hot Pursuit?